Hedrick rushes over to Penelope in order to stop the bleeding. As she begins to take care of the girl, she can see that she's breathing heavily, labored. But her eyes open, and she smiles. Worth it. She coughs, some blood trickling out of her mouth. She also notices that Kiyu is grabbing the guard's belt and searching it. He hands Hedrick a small packet. This should help her recover faster. You see that it is a standard trauma packet, designed to quickly treat most significant trauma or wounds until you can get to a better medical center. Hedrick takes the trauma packet. Going for the gauze, she wraps and puts pressure on the bleeding. She's thankful for Dad's lessons in emergency first aid, and continues to stabilize Penelope. Kiyu, take a mental note of the prisoners standing up and which ones are the best fighters. She looks back to the girl. See, I told you, Penelope, you're hella badass. Where are the other guards? Hedrick, here. Kiyu holds his hand out, and you see a set of keys hooked on one of his talons. He takes the gun belt and opens 2 pouches. 12 bullets extra. His claws search the guard, and he finds a plastic card. He waves it back and forth before shrugging and pocketing it. Penelope coughs a couple more times before standing up. She staggers for a moment, sighs, then stands a bit more assuredly. She flips open the cylinder to the revolver, seeing only 1 spent casing and 5 live rounds. She pushes the cylinder closed and positions it to fire the next round if need be. The other guards are busy, with about 20 or so prisoners. Their hands are full, and you guess a full lockdown is imminent. Does anyone know where that warden's assistant might be? Hedrick asks. Probably in the medical wing, far side of the center, Penelope says, trying to recall any specifics off the top of her head. Let's see if we can find him. He may be our only chance. Hedrick looks through what Kiyu gave her, and the guard's pockets to see if there's anything else that can get rid of the collar. As she looks, she finds in his pockets and pouches a wallet, a lighter, 15 cigarettes in a pouch, a comb, and 21 credits. Kiyu gave her a set of keys, as well as some sort of thick plastic card. She checks the keys and card against the collar, but as she begins to check, she notes that the guards are in full riot gear, and they're making their way at the opposite end of the cafeteria through the barred doors and into the eating area. Kiyu grabs Hedrick and Penelope and begins making their way to the opposite side, towards the medical wing. No time. Let's get out of here and figure it out later. Hedrick follows, helping with Penelope. Right, let's go. As they run to the other end, Penelope looks to Hedrick and then to the keys. Hedrick, give me the keys. I can get us out of here. Hedrick tosses them to her. Penelope catches them, and as she runs, she thumbs through them and finds the right one. They get to the door, key the lock, and get to the other side just as the riot guards enter the cafeteria. Penelope then locks the door before they can get to him. In a bold move, Penelope shoves the barrel of the gun into the large keyhole and pulls the trigger, the mechanism effectively disabled. She turns and begins making her way towards the medical wing. Come on, they can figure a way out and around us, but at least it's going to buy us some time. Hedrick takes the keys back and follows, looking for anything that could lead to the medical assistant. She also looks for any sort of medical supplies or first aid kits along the walls in order to help Penelope. As they make their way down the hall, the center transitions from what is clearly prisoner cells to a more office-like feel. There are now rooms with peepholes and small windows, labels and nameplates, and carpeted floors. A secretary walks out from a room, sees the group running down the hall, and screams before going back into the office and locking the door. Finally, they reach the medical office at the end of the hall and to the right. Hedrick quickly makes her way to the door. Cover me, please. She opens it and looks around. As she opens the door, she notices there's a young man inside. He's sitting at a desk, filing out paperwork. He seems unconcerned by the alarms and doesn't really look up from his papers, simply asking, Yes, is there something either I or... His words stop mid-sentence as he looks at you, surprise and confusion on his face. Hedrick puts her hands up. Yes, we don't want to hurt you, we just need your help, so please don't do anything drastic. Hedrick realizes the young man mentioned either I or, and looks around for another person. To the young man's right, she sees another door. It's open, and it looks like it goes to an examination room. She looks back. Kiyu, take a look in the other room, please. As Kiyu enters the room, The young man backs up to the corner, and you notice he has a Mustang 211 on his right hip and 2 extra magazines on his left. Those are nice weapons for a doctor. You a medic or a guard? He remains silent as Kiyu walks to the other door. Penelope comes over next. Their eyes meet, before each sees the other's firearms. Penelope keeps hers at a low but ready stance, and the man is clearly contemplating a draw. Kiyu stops as he enters the other door and shakes his head. No one else. Good, Hedrick answers. Penelope, is this the guy who put that sigil on you? No, different guy. She bites her lip, unsure what to do until the man chimes in. Is that all y'all are here for? That and healing, Hedrick responds. The young man nods and puts his hands in a less threatening posture. Who has the sigil? Hedrick jerks her head towards Penelope. I warn you, don't do anything stupid. We don't have much to lose. Well, that makes all of us then. So same goes for you. He looks to Penelope, then jerks his head to the other room. She hands her revolver to Hedrick, then begins making her way to the examination area. Hedrick follows and sarcastically says, Well, if you want, we have a position open for a medic. A snort comes from the man. He taps his right leg and you hear a hollow thunk. Wouldn't be able to keep up with you. Not after my prosthetics. Now, Miss... Penelope, on the table, please. Penelope gulps, then ascends and sits, shaky for a moment, then regaining herself. Hedrick gently puts her hand on Penelope's shoulder. I won't let anything happen to you, and he's not one of those guards. I don't think he'll try anything. Besides, you could just kick his leg. The young man goes to a bookshelf and fingers through a few thick, leather-bound books before pulling 2 out. He sets them beside Penelope before standing in front of her. Now, where is it? She rolls up her sleeve and reveals her forearm. He looks at it and sighs, then opens the 2 books. One is full of writing, one is empty. He looks to the Savra and asks, It's Kiyu, right? Can you get a scalpel, please? The Savra looks at him, confused, but shrugs. It takes a moment before he finds one and walks over. Now please, cut my palm open. The Savra recoils in horror. Sir, you have done nothing for me to... The transfer spell. It needs blood in order to work. Please, cut my hand open. Hedrick's curious now. Hey, what's your name? Kiyu slices the man's palm, which immediately pools blood. He takes his hand and places it on the empty book, a perfect, albeit bloody, handprint formed on the sheet. He takes the same hand and places it on the sigil of Penelope. She looks away, partially in disgust, partially embarrassment at the ludicrous nature of this. It's Ironheart, man. Cody Ironheart. Ironheart, I think you should come with us. We need you, and most of us can help you keep up. This won't be our last fight. Please? Cody looks at you before his eyes go to the book, full of writing. He begins speaking in a clearly foreign language. The whole ordeal takes about 2 minutes, but you notice as he speaks that the blood on the book becomes smaller and smaller until it turns into the image of the sigil and burns black. Cody removes his hand, the wound now a cauterized cut. You find it remarkable that he showed no pain, showed no issue, showed no defiance at the removal of the sigil. He just simply did it. You really need an old war cripple that bad? Please. My father fought in a lot of wars. War cripples are the best to have when everything goes to asylum around you. Cody looks at Hedrick, pondering her words, before he turns sharply to Penelope. Breathe again for me. She stops, then does so. He shakes his head, turns, and begins pulling some syringes from a cabinet, followed by some glass vials. Kiyu looks unsure until Cody speaks. I'm going to give you some stuff that's going to help you feel a lot better. I really don't like how labored your breath is coming, Miss Penelope. Why are you here, Cody? Hedrick asks. He fills the syringe and injects it into Penelope's arm. She immediately begins to breathe easier and gains some color. He repeats the process 3 more times. Each time she looks better and better until she is her normal self. Only place that would hire me, ma'am. The Vedan military gave me a red heart, a pat on the back, and then a kick in the ass telling me I needed to transition back to civilian life. Hedrick looks around for something, anything, to cut the collar off. As she does so, she says, "Well, we'll hire you, Cody. You could do more than force sigils on people." "I can't put sigils on people. I'm not gifted like that. I just know how to remove them if they need it, and the head of medicine is out." Hedrick continues looking around for any sort of tool to be able to remove her collar. What even is this made of? She wonders to herself. And as she looks at it, she realizes it's some sort of steel and aluminum alloy, but really she's just not sure. And as she does look, Cody catches her glimpses. He watches her intently before he sighs. "Sit down. I can remove it." Hedrick sits down and watches him. Cody looks at the collar before he walks over to another cabinet. He digs around for a moment before he comes back with a convoluted-looking key-like device. He turns the collar slightly, then puts the device inside of a depression, which sinks in and allows for the key to enter fully. He fidgets for a couple of minutes before there is a click, and the device opens. He takes it off, checks your neck for any scars, and then puts the collar down on the table. Hedrick rubs her neck, and for the first time in a long time, her real voice comes out. "Thank you, Cody." "You're welcome, miss." It dawns on Hedrick that she hasn't provided her real name. She extends her hand, offering a shake. "My name is Hedrick Wolf. We very much appreciate your helping us without a fight." Cody takes her hand and gently shakes it. "You needed help. Regardless of who you are, I have a note to keep." "Can you heal the rest of us before we go?" "Yes. Penelope should be good to go. Kiyu?" The Sovereign looks at the man, then comes over and sits. He again produces a series of syringes and vials. He slowly measures each, doing arithmetic in his head based on size, on weight, metabolism, and other factors you're sure but she can't think of. The injections don't take long, and Kiyu looks completely refreshed, much like Penelope. The Sovereign stands and bows to the human. "Thank you, Dr. Ironheart." Hedrick looks at Penelope and Kiyu, so thankful they're safe now. And as she looks at the two of them, Cody turns around and opens a large trunk. He appears to be rummaging around for something. Hedrick decides to look over his shoulder, having no manners. She watches from over his shoulder as she sees a bunch of military gear, a uniform and some boots, a belt with some pouches, and then at the bottom, a glint of black metal and wood. "Miss Hedrick, what weapons are you most familiar with?" "Gauntlets, a pistol, saxophone, and my voice." Cody unlocks his belt, handing it to you, before putting his own backpack and medical harness on. He pulls out two other weapons. One is a Hampton's repeater, the characteristic drum magazine, compensator, foregrip, and finned barrel a dead giveaway, and a rather gangster-looking weapon at that. The other is a fountain glade battle implement. On the stock, you notice a roughly carved name, Vera. Hedrick slings the holster around her hips and checks the weapon. Satisfied, she looks at Cody. "You with us?" "Why, yes, I am." Cody lifts up the two books that he grabbed previously. "These alone will keep the people here unsure of how to proceed, and far more cautious if they are missing. The enchanter here, well, he will have a lot more to do, and a lot more care to put into each person. Plus," Cody puts the books away. He walks over to Penelope and hands her the Hampton's repeater. "You will need someone to watch your back and make sure you don't go down while out in the field." "You can explain it all in detail if we escape. Let's move. I need to get something they took from me. Where do they keep the prisoners' belongings?" "Intake, to the north section of the building. We'll need to cut through the cafeteria or go around the perimeter outside." Cody stops and thinks for a moment. "Either we get close and personal, or we hope they don't have riflemen in the towers." Think there is a possibility we could find a couple more like-minded folks if we risk the cafeteria?" "There's a chance, and it would be a better one than outside, but more guards are going to be in there. You okay with that?" Penelope and Kiyu look to each other. They nod their heads, then look back to Hedrick. "We have to deal with guards regardless. Let's see if we can get anyone else out of here." "Well, then it's settled. To the cafeteria. Will also give us a chance to get to intake and get your items. No time to waste. Let's get going." The four of you begin making your way back to the cafeteria. Alarm klaxons are blaring. There's a faint noise of rioting in the main dining area of the cafeteria. As you approach, Penelope racks the H-bolt to her Hampton's repeater and inserts the magazine into the magwell. Cody racks the bolt to his battle implement, inserts a clip, and is ready for action. Turning the corner, you take in the true extent of the riot. The fire suppression system has been activated. Water sprinklers activating and spraying, trying to keep any fires from spreading. There's a group of about a dozen prisoners against half a dozen riot guards in the middle of the cafeteria. There's also a group of 3 just outside the main riot. One of them, a woman, looks to be searching around for something, while the only male human keeps guard. The other woman, far shorter and definitely of a different ancestry, is in the process of checking a .38 revolver she recovered from a guard. They look like people who can handle themselves. Let's go see if they want to help. The 4 of you head to the small group, realizing that they are probably some of the only clan and undesirable members that you are thinking of. Siding up to them, the shorter woman raises her revolver towards you, before realizing you aren't guards. What do you want? Her voice is high, anxious, on edge. You looking to get out of here? The short woman looks to you, hard, then her friends, before nodding. Join us, we kind of have a plan. The woman again looks to her 2 friends. They look to each other and simply nod in agreement. She looks to you and says, if you think there's a chance to get out of here, we'll take it. Let's get to intake and try and find some fire. Katrina needs one. You look to Katrina, the other woman, who nods. What do you need fire for? Kiyu asks, looking between Hedra and the newcomer. I am gifted and can light things on fire. I just need a source that will stay ignited. The suppression systems aren't helping. Katrina flips her wet, brown hair back, looking kind of like a drowned rat. Hedrit, the lighter. Hedra tosses the Zippo to Katrina. She catches it and smiles. Perfect. If we get to intake, I can burn us out. The building going into lockdown like this will prevent even the guards from getting in and out, but not me. You begin to make your way to intake. You note that the group in the center is beginning to thin in the face of the 6 riot guards, but you guess you have about 5 minutes to get to intake, find your things, and make your decision from there. Heading that way, there are 2 guards in full riot gear. One of them has his baton out, and ready. As you approach, he hits his gloved hand with it. Stop. Put your weapons down. Now. Against all reason, rationale, and training, the guards simply drop their batons and revolvers. Their weapons are confiscated, and they simply stand there, trying to fight the siren's voice, but unable to do so. Penelope is looking over the door and realizes its function. It's one of those new card-reading ones. It needs a thick piece of plastic with a magnetic strip. Like this. Kiyu holds up the card, and Penelope takes it from him with a nod. She waves the plastic card in front of the block reader, which goes from a red bulb to a green, and the door unlocks with a satisfying ka-chunk. Inside, now. The now 7 of you file inside of the prisoner intake. Hedra finds that there are a series of standing lockers and trunks. Spreading out, they begin to search each one, trying to find their belongings. Hedra finds her locker almost immediately, grabbing her clothes as well as her mother's locket and her really fancy Georg 08 pistol. Hedra looks over and notices that Penelope is pulling out her clothing, including a large overcoat and hat, plus a pistol with a large suppression unit. Kiyu is pulling out a series of armor plates and a simple kimono. He puts them on before grabbing and pulling a long blade. He pulls the blade just out of its sheath, and you see a beautiful folded pattern to the blade. He nods in appreciation of the weapon, and puts it back. Katrina pulls out her clothes, and begins putting them on over her jumpsuit. She lights the Zippo, and you watch as the fire suddenly travels up her arm. There are ashes from the prison jumpsuit, but her clothing remains. She sighs, and walks over to the vault-like door, the entrance to the center. Avery opens up a locker and sighs in relief. From it, she pulls out a bizarre-looking shotgun. The weapon has a brass frame and heat shield, blackened metal, barrel, and tube, a drum magazine, and wooden furniture. The sights are ornate, but very much functional, and the weapon chamber is a shell with a satisfying... Jin opens up a locker and finds his own robes, putting them on over his jumpsuit as well. There's a moment where you think he may pull more out, but he closes the door to the locker and walks over to the cafeteria doors. He listens, and he shakes his head. We are going to have company shortly. Get ready. Kiyu walks over to the door. baton in his offhand and katana in his main hand. Jin stands next to him and nods. The Savra returns the nod in solidarity. Penelope jumps in behind the Savra and the human. The Hamptons repeat her having a lane of fire between the two of them. "If you can give me 2 minutes, I can burn through the door and get us out," Katrina yells, touching the door with her flaming hand. You look to her and nod. "Make it happen. We will keep them off of you. Let me give you guys a little edge." Hedra holds out her hand, and a bright light suddenly bursts forth. As the light flashes and then disappears, everyone sees the instrument that has just been summoned, a saxophone. Hedra wets her lips and puts them on the mouthpiece of the brass instrument and begins playing. From everywhere, from nowhere, an orchestra begins to play, the small space permeated by various instruments. Then Hedrick's sax comes through, the sound traveling from the ears, the heart, the entire body of each party member. Suddenly, everyone is hit with a strong assurance and resolve to make it through this day. Cody takes up a position at the far end of the room, next to Katrina, his battle implement just able to hit anyone if Penelope moves. Avery runs over to take a position next to Jin and Penelope, her shotgun able to cover yet another lane of fire in the event it is needed. Hedrick finds herself taking a position behind Kiyu, Cody's pistol in her hands. There's a sound of the door unlocking and opening. Suddenly, you're faced with the guards from the center of the room. The short negotiations begin. Avery brings her shotgun to bear on the nearest enemy, one in full riot gear, and holds the trigger down. Old Fail Chester 197s do not contain a trigger disconnect, meaning that as fast as you can pump the shotgun, it will fire. The half-dwarf, half-halfling fires 3 successful rounds into the guard in front of her, the 12-gauge buckshot tearing his armor and skin to shreds. He's unable to move or get away from the onslaught, simply resigning to the abuse his body takes. Hedrick, on the opposite side, sees an opportunity to move over and get a better angle of attack, as well as denial of area for the guards. She aims down the sights of the Cody's pistol and pulls the trigger, once, twice. Both 45 caliber bullets slam into the riot guard, who takes them to his shoulder, but is able to recover after a moment. Penelope brings the Hamptons repeater to bear on another guard. She looks through the modified peephole rear sight and lines it up with the blade on the compensator. She switches from semi-automatic to fully automatic and pulls the trigger. The first burst of 45 caliber bullets find their mark, slamming the stomach, chest, and shoulder of a guard. The next burst is just as successful, and near the same location. Kiyu, following his warrior ways, charges into the battle, his baton and blade making a deadly combination. But the Savra is thinking as much as he is acting. He wants to maximize his weapon's ability to electrocute and attacks 2 separate targets. Despite them having their own batons out, Kiyu's movements and fluid nature is out of their depth. He's able to bring the baton against the chest of the nearest guard, and the blade goes along the guard's stomach. The man goes down, having been shot by both Penelope and Hedrick previously. Kiyu changes his target, this time going after the man that had been shot by Avery. His blade and baton combination strikes true, and the man gasps as the blade impales him through his armor, causing him to buckle to his knees. Jin sees 2 more opponents behind the 2 that were just downed. He lifts his hands, and you watch as streams of electricity begin emanating around him, coming from the lighting fixture, from the walls, the batons, everything. He channels the electricity, his hair and his eyes glowing a bluish white, and begins throwing bolts at 2 more of the guards. All of them hit, and the guards seize up under the intense electrical pulses. The 2 other guards behind the stunned opponent begin to move up, taking advantage of the gap their downed comrades left. The first one strikes at Kiyu, who is able to block the first attack without much issue, but the second attack is far superior. The baton cracks against Kiyu's exposed side, and generates enough of a shock to force the Savra into paralysis. The other guard attacks Jin, but watches as the Joriten clan member feeds off of the electricity his baton emits. He still brings the blunt weapon down, but finds that it bounces harmlessly once, twice, off the young man's electrical shielding. Avery, now with a new target in front of her, puts 1 round of buckshot into the target. It hits home, putting a satisfying grin on her face. She slings the shotgun and pulls her revolvers, the 2 weapons bucking as she fires from them. Those shots hit home as well, and the halfling dwarf mix further nods in satisfaction at the chaos being caused on these 2. Hedrick, still with a pistol in hand, levels it at the newest target and pulls the trigger, once, twice. She hits the man, both rounds again hitting his shoulder, but being slowed significantly by the armor he wears. Frustrated, the young woman looks to the others, making a decision that will forever change the course of this battle. Penelope swings the barrel of her Hampton's repeater onto the next target, and she pulls the trigger. 3 .45 caliber slugs hit the new target in the stomach. Rather than using up further ammo on this target, she decides to sling the weapon and pull out her own revolver, wanting to save ammunition for the time being. Kiyu recovers from the attack and allows for Cody to run up behind him and begin healing. The young man applies a syringe to the Savra, who immediately feels better and looks at the new guard with disdain in his eyes. Jin continues to throw lightning at the oncoming guards, hitting the 2 closest and forcing them to cringe under the electrical shock. They are unable to move for their comrades, who try but fail to move them so that they can get an attack in on the prisoners attempting to escape. Avery allows for her revolvers to do the talking, as she pulls the triggers once, twice, 3 times. At this range, and with her experience and expertise as a soldier, she is able to get all 6 shots on target. Knowing they don't have much time before reinforcements come, Hedrick lowers her weapons and begins to sing. The music starts out simple, but then it changes. There's a chorus, a choir, a group behind her that brings the music to raise the hair of all involved in the fight. The song is of sadness, desperation, anguish. This is a choir of death. The guards begin to look at each other in fear, in anger, and despair. Penelope aims her revolver at the nearest guard and pulls the trigger twice, both of her bullets hitting home and causing even further confusion and chaos. Kiyu, having been healed by Cody, begins making his way forward. He strikes at the first guard but misses. The last of the electricity courses out of his system, and he winds up dropping the baton. He grips his katana with both hands and brings it down on the nearest guard. The man, barely standing, bears the brunt of the attack and drops beneath the ancient warrior. Cody follows behind Kiyu, applying another syringe between the Savra's swings, and nodding as the lizard should now be fine going forward. Jin continues his own onslaught, keeping 2 of the guards stunned and out of the fight, throwing lightning bolts but looking over his shoulder at Katrina. The wall surrounding her has become a bright yellow color as she applies more and more flame to the steel and concrete construction. In a state of panic, the guards attack each other, bringing one of their own down from the constant attacks before turning on each other. One of them gets a lucky hit on the other, forcing a stunning effect from the electric current. Avery begins the process of reloading her revolvers, knowing this battle is essentially over and not wanting to waste ammunition. She begins looking at the guards who are down, eager to search them when the danger has fully passed. Hedrick continues her song, keeping the guards in disarray and confusion as they listen to the choir of the 23 she had ended previously. Penelope gets a lucky shot on the stunned guard, the bullet hitting him in the chest, burrowing deep. Kiyu runs up to the final guard, his katana in hand, and he says something deep, something in Sovereign, as he brings the blade down. The man takes the first blow across the shoulder, blood rushing from the large wound. He kneels, but is still in the fight. Bringing honor to this warrior, even in death, Kiyu brings his blade low and swings upward. The blade traces the man's chest, causing him to sprawl backwards onto the ground. Kiyu flicks the blade, the blood dripping completely off as if the blade were folded to it. The battle is over. Negotiations were truly short, and the guards have their pistols and ammunition removed. By the time all ammo has been taken care of, Katrina announces, "Door is coming down." The door, now a white-hot mess, begins to melt, completely dripping into nothing more than molten slag of metal and concrete. She pulls the fire back and nods at her work done to the door. Carefully, everyone is able to get outside, seeing the prison in chaos around them. "We need to find transportation." Hedrick looks around for a boat, or better yet, that Ismay woman. And as she looks around, she notices that there are an assortment of ships, varying in size down at the dock. She can see that they vary from fishing trawlers to cargo carriers, sailboats, and there's even a military cutter. "We'll need something fast," and Hedrick begins to walk towards the cutter. As she begins to walk to the cutter, she notices that there are a few of the other ships that are beginning to weigh anchor and push away from the dock. Clearly alerted to the riot, that must be happening inside the center. The cutter is working on detaching from the dock as they walk up. She sees a man in a large coat calling out orders and speaking to his crew on the deck. He appears to either be the first mate or the captain, based on the way he's speaking to everyone else. Hedrick calls upon her power. "Captain, stop!" The captain immediately stops and looks at her. Under his tricorn hat, she can see the pointed tips of ears, half-elf-like, but it's his blue-tinged skin that gives the mer away. Through a thick and long beard, he replies, "Why, a siren? What do you need?" Hedrick smiles at him. "Help, sir, please. Let my companions and I leave with you. We can hide if need be, just give us a chance. I'd rather not have to use my voice to get what I need. However, I have been left little choices as of late. We are willing to help out where we can." The mer looks to Hedrick, to the prison, and back to Hedrick. His voice changes, revealing his mer heritage with a thick accent. "You just escaped from there?" "Sure did. They aren't very happy right now, so I understand if you'd rather not help." He looks back to the prison and spits, before saying something you assume is rather vulgar in Merisian. His eyes return to you, and he waves at another crew member. The crew walks over to the large walkway, extending it to the dock for you to come aboard. "I am sure they will be after you fast. Aboard with you, quickly now." Hedrick looks to the group and waves everyone aboard. "Quickly now." She follows after everyone is on, and shakes the man's hand. "Thank you. My name is Hedrick Wolf." The captain shakes your hand back, and takes his hat off, a surprising gesture of respect. "Edward Satch. I will get the first mate up here, and she will be able to help you to your quarters." He walks over to a headset intercom, and makes an announcement, his accent disappearing in the loud noise. "First mate Vandre, top deck please." Hedra thinks to herself, "I'm going to have a hard time with all the titles and firsts and seconds and thirds and what have yous," and a moment later the same orc from earlier appears from the doorway behind the bridge. She looks at Hedrick, stops, a look of shock on her face. She walks up to the captain and salutes him. "Captain, you called?" Thatch salutes back and bobs his head to the group. "I have a request. These newcomers will need quarters. Please, see to it with haste. I'm going to set us off and get us away from here." Ismay nods and gives a hearty, "Aye, aye, Captain." Her attention shifts to you. She clears her throat. "Follow me. I'll show you down below where you can stay." Hedrick nods. "Lead the way, Miss Vandre." Ismay leads the small group down the stairs, next to the bridge. As she descends, she announces to all, "Just a heads up. There isn't a segregated sleeping quarters. Men, women, Savra, whatever. Restrooms are singles, so that will help, but everything else is pretty tight. When we get to port on the mainland, things will be better. As long as you don't strip search me, then tell me to bend over and cough to make sure I don't have contraband, or watch me in the shower. I'll be just peachy." Hedrick looks around and tries to note of any good hiding places. As she looks at the quarters of the cutter, she notes that there really isn't much for places to hide. Perhaps one of the bathrooms, or a closet somewhere, but really, there isn't much. It's cramped, it's small, but it is well kept and maintained. Exploring the rest of the ship may lead to more concealed areas that would better suit her needs. Don't worry, showers are ladies first, then the men. No one really cares what you look like as long as you don't start nothing. Ismay smiles, clearly recalling an event in the past that must have ended well. "Good to know. I'll try and behave myself." Ismay shows you around, pointing out your hammock as well as your personal footlocker. She gets through most of the group when there's a sudden lurch, a deep rumble of diesel and electric engines, and the smell of exhaust. The captain must be casting off. Good thing, too. "Should we check, just in case?" "I will do so. You guys can stay down here and get settled in." Ismay smiles, a friendly smile, at you. Hedra smiles back and looks to the group as she leaves. "You guys all okay?" Penelope's sitting on a hammock, breathing a little heavily. Cody's attending to her, speaking gently. Kiyu is giving the two some space, settling into a bunk that is on the bottom so that he won't hit anyone with his tail. Katrina, Avery, and Jin are settling in a row of hammocks, setting their arms in their lockers for the time being. Each of them looks to you, with varying nods, thumbs up, and verbal yup responses. Hedrick walks over to the hammock and sits in it, puts her head in her hands, and absent-mindedly says, "Well, I didn't think I was gonna get any of this to work. What now?" "Now," Kiyu chuckles, a deep, rumbling chuckle. "Now you figure out how to keep this going." "Yeah, well, I'm open to suggestions," Hedrick sighs. "We need to figure out how to hide. Then we can figure out how to fight back." "As am I. Perhaps a conversation with our new captain or his first mate? A good idea. It's a few minutes later that Ismay returns to the crew quarters. Penelope is breathing easier, holding Cody's hand and listening to him. Ismay gives them a weird look before continuing to you. We are underway and heading to port back on the mainland. You're free to do as you wish once you hit Vita. Captain's orders. Hedra thinks, damn girl, you're a smooth operator. Thank you, Ismay. Didn't think you'd see us again so soon, did you? Honestly, fuck no. It was something I hoped for, but... The half-orc shakes her head. That said, I am very glad you made it out. Well, there are others who need out too. Mark my words, as the gods are my witness. One day I'll see that place burn to the ground. Ismay leans back against a bunk. Her eyes are genuine in their support. I think you will. I'll need a lot of help. Hedrick looks at her with question in her eyes. Yeah, you will. She flashes you a toothy smile. Good thing there are still good people who would be willing to help. Hedrick smiles back at the woman, feeling a sort of kindred spirit. Want to help? She puts out her hand. Yeah. Ismay takes her hand. Let's make a difference. This is the end of the introduction to A Siren's Call. Please join us for Chapter 1.